All right, thank you. So we will begin this meeting of the Village of Fredonia Board of Trustees, Thursday, July 17th. The first order of business is Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Next item is the roll call. Trustee Beglin. Here. Trustee Dorward. Here. Trustee Frank. Here. Trustee Eipert. Here. Trustee Siri. Here. Trustee Van Roo. President Lenz. Here. All right, the next item is public comment. Please note that public comments are limited to 5 minutes per person. No volunteers, so we will move on. The next item on the agenda is the consent agenda, approving the minutes of the June 19th, 2025 Village Board of Trustees and regular meeting, and approving the general fund water and sewer invoices.
For the water and sewer invoices, there were some in your packet, and then there were additional bills being paid this week that were handed out to you. So there's 2 sets of lists.
Motion to approve consent agenda, including additional bills.
I'll second.
We have a motion, we have a second. Is there any further discussion? All right, I'll call the question. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed? All right, presentations. The presentation of the 2024 audit from Auditor Wendy Unger.
Do I need to assess her?
No.
Well, speak really loud.
I can do that.
Oh, there we go. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. As noted, my name is Wendy Unger. I am the principal responsible for the village's 2024 audit. Included in your board packets, you should have a several page handout, which is what I will use to go through the audited financial statements and the reporting and insights document that I do see you have hard copies of, that are, I believe, is also included in your packet. So the first thing we're going to touch on is the objective of the audit. The objective, similar to the past, has been to issue an opinion on the financial statements. We've done that, and included within your audited financial statements is a clean, unmodified opinion. Highest level of assurance you can obtain. That is the same type of opinion you've received in the past, and the best type of opinion you can receive. That clean, unmodified opinion means that the financial information contained in the audited statements is believed to be materially accurate. All disclosures that are required to be included have been included. We have followed generally accepted accounting principles. I will note that there is a highlight in that opinion this year for a new governmental accounting standard that was effective for the village for 2024. That was GASB 100. And when we get to the financial information in the presentation, I'll just highlight what that new governmental accounting standard meant. We also evaluated, for your information, the implementation of GASB 101, or Governmental Accounting Standard 101. That is the accounting for compensated absences. And as part of that evaluation, it was determined that did not have a material impact on the village's financial statements, but just wanted to note that as part of the presentation. On the next page then of the presentation, this is where I get it, have provided some very high level financial information. All of this information is contained within your audited statements in much more detail. I'm going to hit this at a very high level. Please feel free to stop me if you do have questions. I'll do my best to address those as we move through the discussion. On within the summary financial information, the first column I presented there is the village's general fund. This is the day-to-day operating fund of the village and accounts for most of the activity that is not utility related. When we look at the general fund, we look at that in comparison to budget. A very good representation of what was expected to happen and ultimately what did happen. So the general fund for 2024 had $1.6 million of revenue compared to a $1.5 million budget. I will also note that during 2024, the village board did amend the budget. So your original budget and your final budget, although neither of them considered adding or subtracting anything from fund balance, there were changes in some of the figures. And both of those are presented in your audited statements. But again, general fund, 1.6 million of actual to 1.55 million of budgeted revenue. You came in over budget by $53,000 within your general fund. Really two large contributing factors to that. One was there was some additional tax revenue that came in the form of omitted taxes that came through on your statement of taxes. That was roughly $39,000 of additional revenue. And then the other larger portion of that was investment income. A very good year for 2024. So your investment income came in $12,000 higher than anticipated. So those are the largest pieces of that $53,000 overage. Expenditures, 1.5 million of actual compared to a $1.38 million budget. So your expense categories came in over budget by roughly $140,000. When we look at the reason for that variance, a couple different areas. Public Works came in $92,000 over budget. There was an additional $75,000 of spending on maintenance on streets and highways. That was not budgeted for. Also refuse and recycling, both of those categories came in slightly over budget by roughly $5,000 or $6,000. So that is the Public Works portion. Park and Rec came in $31,000 over budget. Salaries within that category were $15,000 over, and then your village events came in approximately $12,000 over budget. So those are the largest portions there. Your legal costs were slightly over budget by roughly $5,000 also within your general fund. So when you look at your actual results in comparison to budget, again, as I noted, you budgeted to break even in your general fund. You ultimately used $53,000 of fund balance and ended the year at $223,000. As you can see in the presentation, I broke that out. There's two pieces to that. A portion of that $223,000 is restricted. You have impact fees that are recorded within your general fund. They can only be used for which those were collected, and those are restricted. So those are monies you can only spend for their purposes. That's $22,000. The remaining portion is your unassigned fund balance. That's your working capital, your day-to-day, your contingency monies that you have on hand for any unforeseen type expenses. That equates to $201,000, which represents roughly 12% of your operating budget. The village does have a policy that requires that figure to be between 25 and 35% of your operating budget. So you are on the low side and not currently in compliance with that policy. But something to look as you go into your next budget cycle in potentially adding some to fund balance to bring you back into compliance. The remaining columns on this page, I'm going to go through a bit more quickly as the titles of the funds do highlight what the activity included in them. Fire and ambulance is your next column. This does not include paramedic, so keep that in mind. $410,000 of revenue, that's charges to customers mainly in the form of ambulance runs. $476,000 of expenses. General fund did contribute some funding to that program. That other sources, $139,000 is monies that came from the general fund. So the fire and ambulance added $73,000 to fund balance and ended the year at $190,000. The next column is the paramedic column, and you'll see that that column's empty and there's just those two figures. That's the implementation of GASB 100. Not to get into details, but there's a calculation we do under Governmental Accounting Standard 34 that requires funds that are either major or non-major based on activity. Paramedic changed from a major fund to a non-major fund and is included in that very far right column for 2024. That was just a presentation of GASB 100 that shows that fund balance being moved. The next column is the capital project fund, $172,000 of revenue, $100,000 of that is ARPA money. The other 72,000 is park grants. The capital project fund spent $876,000. Most of that, roughly 604,000, was on road projects during the year. So the capital project fund also had some new debt during the year, and also had a transfer in from the general fund of 61,000. So overall, capital project added 257 to fund balance, and it ended the year at 274,000. Those monies are earmarked for capital projects into the future. The debt service fund, $255,000 of revenue. That's all tax revenue. You levy a tax and then you make principal and interest payments on village debt. This is not utility debt. This is only borrowings that have paid for the various village projects. The debt service fund, because you also borrowed in TID 3, there was some premium that was generated on the borrowing. So the 354,000 of additional revenue into the debt service fund is from the premium. That premium is in the debt service fund to make interest payments until you have the ability and the timing to do the appropriate levy that's needed to make the debt service payments. So the debt service fund added 350,000 to fund balance and ended the year at 347. Again, all restricted and restricted for debt service purposes. The next column is your TID 3. So TID 3 had $465,000 of revenue. Roughly half of that was increment generated by the TID. The other half is in the form of investment income. You spent $2.7 million in TID 3 during the year. Roughly $2.5 million of that was on roads and infrastructure in TID 3. The remaining portion was principal and interest on TID 3 debt, and it has its own debt. Also during the year, $3.6 million of other sources. $3.5 million of that was the borrowing. You did a borrowing during the year, so a portion of that went into TID 3. And then the remaining portion of that other sources is lot sales, so roughly 126,000 additional sales there. So TID 3 added 1.4 million to fund balance and ended the year at 1.418 million of fund balance. TID fund balance is always restricted. It can only be used for TID purposes, so that is not a source of any other funding for any other funds. The last column there, title non-major, this is your paramedic fund, as I mentioned previously, and your lab fund. That's a relatively new fund for the village. In total, those funds had $364,000 of revenue, as you would expect. Most of that is paramedic. A portion of that is lab. They also had $267,000 of expenses. They added $97,000. Again, most of that was added to paramedic. However, the lab fund, which was in a deficit position, did add to fund balance, so it is beginning to cover its deficit, and I believe going forward that deficit will go away relatively quickly. So at the end of the year, those two funds combined had $230,000 of fund balance. $10,000 is the deficit in the lab fund, and $240,000 is the fund balance in the paramedic fund. On the next page, the last two funds of the village are the two utilities. The utilities follow a different accounting methodology. So when we talk about the utilities, we don't talk about them from the standpoint of fund balance. Fund balance isn't a term that they use. So when we look at the activity of the utilities, we look at them from the standpoint of what fluctuation occurred within the net position of that fund. So when we talk about the first column there, which is the water, keep in mind you had a water increase that went into effect 1/1/24. I believe it was roughly an 8% increase. So you had a full year of the new rates in place for the water utility. So when we look at the water utility, we'll note about 3 rows down, we see the change in that position. So the water utility did still see a decrease in that position. When we look at that and we compare it to the previous year activity, water added to that position roughly 145,000. So although you had the new rate increase, water still saw roughly a $20,000 increase in public charges for services. So the customers were paying more for the water that they use. However, in 2023, there was what we refer to as capital contribution. So this is work done by an outside, either a developer or another fund in the village. So for example, TID 3. They made contributions to the utilities for the work that the TID paid for. In 2023, there was roughly $123,000 of capital contributed, although it's not cash, it still comes through as revenue. So you didn't have that in 2024. So again, did see a decrease in that position. Also, water expenses were up roughly 67,000 over the previous year. There was additional well and pump repair that was needed in 24, and interest expenses going up due to the additional debt that has been incurred. So overall, water ended the year at roughly $3 million of net position. Again, very large number, not fund balance, not money you have for spending, because most of that is your plant, is your infrastructure, less depreciation. Water did end the year though at $703,000 of cash. All of that is unrestricted and available for spending at your discretion. I do want to say that both water and sewer saw positive increases in cash from a cash flow perspective, but also remember that both of those had borrowing done in the year that wasn't all spent. So there's a little bit of unspent bond proceeds that are still in each of those funds. So we'll talk about the results in sewer in a second, but water cash increased by 228,000, but it also borrowed 440,000 and only spent a portion of that. Sewer utility, the last column, its rate increase will be, or was effective, 1/1/25, the 21.4% increase. So did not see any increase in revenue from customers during 2024. Actually saw a decrease due to some one-time type items that came in 23 related to the septic discharge permit and some insurance reimbursements that came in that equated to roughly $65,000. Expenses in sewer also went up 40,000. Wages were up. Outside services were up 30,000 for line and fan repairs, and likewise interest costs were also up due to debt issuance costs. So overall, the sewer utility saw a decrease in that position of 127,000. That compares to a decrease of 26,000 last year. End of the year at 2.3 million of net position, 1.1 million of cash. However, in the sewer utility, you have to keep in mind you have an equipment replacement fund. Those are monies that are required by the DNR to be set aside for future equipment replacement. That equates to roughly 759,000 of that 1.1 million. So the difference, roughly 400,000, is your unrestricted money. Sewer saw $294,000 increase in cash and borrowed 390,000 during the year. On the last page, before I get into just quickly communicating the reporting and insights, I do want to just note, included in your audited statement, something new for 2024. Village recently, or within the last year or so, began its participation in Wisconsin retirement system. And included in your footnotes on page 40 to 45 is an extensive footnote regarding your participation. That footnote and that activity does not affect your fund statements. However, under the full accrual reporting model, you are required to report a liability for your proportionate share of the activity of WRS as of 12/31/23. And yes, you will always be a year off based on the timing of when WRS presents their information to you. That liability as of the end of the year was roughly $50,000. That liability will fluctuate. It can get very big. It can swing to an asset. All depends on market. WRS is typically very close to 100% funded. However, when the market does poorly, you'll see an increase in the liability. When the market does very well and they're overfunded, you'll have an asset that gets recorded. Again, not something you owe, not something you get when it's an asset, but just wanted to mention that there is new disclosure. So if you're somebody that compares year to year, you're going to see a new footnote. Just wanted to quickly touch base on why that is included in there. Last then, required communication regarding the reporting and insights document. Nothing new that I need to really share with you within this document. Included in there are any comments or recommendations that come up as part of the audit process. We share some standard communication we have with you as the village board. We also are required under our standards to communicate any material weaknesses that may exist within the village. And included in there continue to be segregation of duties. There just isn't enough people involved in the accounting process to achieve a full segregation, so we do include that as a material weakness. We also, because we as the auditors become part of your internal control by preparing your auditing statements, and we do material audit adjustments as part of the audit process, that is also material weakness, so that's included in there. Neither of those are new to the village, nor are they unusual or unexpected for organizations the size of the village. As I noted, some standard communication, nothing unusual or unexpected I need to highlight there. And then the last thing I will note in that report is a section that highlights the new governmental accounting standards that will be effective for the village going forward. One is in 2025, two are in 2026. So just to remind the village to keep your eye on the impact of those to your financial presentation and annual accounting. At the very bottom, I have included my direct line, my email address. I'm happy to go through this in more detail with any of you. I go through it very quickly, but again, happy to talk with you. But I'm also happy to answer any questions you may have currently.
Any questions?
I do just want to take this opportunity. This is my last time presenting as village auditor, so I just want to wish you all the best. Wish the village great success. Worked with some of you, I think, the entire time I've been here, so several familiar faces. But again, I do wish you all the best and good luck.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Wendy.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, report on village committees, zoning board of appeals. Administrator Jenkins, is there somebody here for zoning board of appeals?
I can give that update. Sorry, I just wasn't prepared for that. But the brief synopsis is that that body met regarding, as we all know, Mr. Lopez, who has a property on Fredonia Ave, regarding he originally applied for a conditional use to allow the operation of a CNC business in his backyard in a shed, detached shed that's part of his home. And again, our ordinance doesn't directly address that as far as like a household occupation and what is allowed and what isn't. So really the Board of Appeals had no choice but to deny that. But after that meeting, as I believe was talked about at the last board meeting, Trustee Van Roo did ask that staff look into that a little bit more. So we'll be doing that. We've already started that process. We've looked at nearby municipalities, how they word and handle household occupations. Some are super strict on what they allow, and some are open-ended. And they just say, we don't care what you're doing as long as you're running a business that doesn't interfere with anybody else. So we did all that research. We met with Trustee Van Roo, and I believe at one of the next following meetings, he'll be starting that ordinance process with you all. And again, this isn't specific just to Mr. Lopez, but this scenario is kind of what opened up Pandora's box, and now we're going to start looking into it. But overall, the meeting went well.
Thank you. Report on the planning commission, that's my baby. The planning commission met and we talked, we had several different items on our agenda. St. John's wants to include a new sign on Fredonia Avenue. We talked about the splash pad sign that gives credit to the donors and so forth. And we talked about a fence that the property owner wants to place just adjacent to Fillmore. These are all going to be on the agenda a little bit later on, so there's really no point to me elaborating on them at this point. So that was what the planning commission did last on the 7th. All right, report on operations of the village by the village president. Reported on the planning commission. We had fun before the 4th. Fun before the 4th went very well. Thank you to all of those in the village, the administration, the people that work for the village, the volunteers. Thank you to everyone for making it a roaring success. hopefully we do even better next year. I also Treasurer Upson found a box with a bunch of guidebooks and so forth, conduct of village board meetings and a few other things. And so we are passing these out. They look like they're educational. They'll help all of us just do a better job doing our job. And so I would recommend that everybody take a look through these. Take care of them so that we can pass them on to the next trustees or president in the future. Beyond that, I don't really have anything else to cover as president, so I will call on the village administrator, Administrator Jenkins, to give his.
Sure, I got a lengthy one, but I'll just try to buzz through items here. First off, we completed Innovation Drive, very exciting. We paved that street. All that's left is the E1 lift stations and should be installed by the end of this month. All of the developers were given an update that they're good to go. A lot of them have started that conversation with Jeremy Pfeiffer, our building inspector. If not, have already started digging, like Jeremy Gasorowski. So that is all positive news. We joined PWSB for their ribbon cutting. So that was a nice way to network with the community. We saw a lot of friendly and familiar faces at that. And obviously want to give them a big shout out for doubling their footprint and, and continuing to invest right here in Fredonia. Treasurer Upson and I reviewed the 6-month budget actuals and made our typical mid-year line item adjustments. The only glaring thing that came out of that process was just an error in how we're coding some of our payroll. And so our team will be working on correcting that so that way the next 6 months look a little bit more accurate than the past were. That also starts as a baseline then for our budget. So Finance Committee met right before this meeting where they recommended approval of our CIP budget items. Those will come before you as a village board at the next meeting as well for recommendation. From there, we start to look at, close to what our numbers should look like towards the end of this year, what the state is giving us for our estimates and aid payments that we should be getting, and making sure that we're making solid recommendations to you guys for what those individual line items should be. Just to kind of go through that, I did hand out a document that has a schedule, the budget schedule. I think I gave everybody one except for myself. But on that schedule, you'll see it's the same schedule that we run through typically each year. So it starts in April and May with the open book and the board of review process where we determine our final values. As of right now, we're seeing just a minor shift in our value from 252 million to 253, but this is not counting manufacturing. We did see an uptick in manufacturing values. The state is the one that does those assessed values. So when those come out later on in the fall, you'll see an uptick of the value of the village. And so again, basic math, when the value of the village goes up and the amount we need to collect remains relatively the same, that means the mill rate, the rate by which we tax people, would go down. So that's a positive thing whenever we see that assessed value go up. Further on the schedule, it talks about the CIP list. The treasurer and I reviewing our numbers, discussing with Ellers on our bonding timelines, which is another thing we talked about with finance. Department heads have till August to submit their individual line item requests to me. We finalize the COLA and merit-based wage percentage plan for staff, and then we work with the treasurer to create the budget. So then the goal is to really by September, we'll be presenting both to the village president, finance chair, and later on the finance committee and the full board, what the draft budget looks like, with a goal of getting final approval by end of October, beginning of November. So one of the suggestions that actually Clerk Johnson had made, considering we have a couple new members, is that I'm going to look at hosting probably the beginning of August, a little budget 101. So whether you have been a long time member or you're somebody who's brand new to all of this, I think it's just a nice opportunity to kind of refresh ourselves on what this process looks like, what really makes our budget, how do our funds work. So that way, when our auditor comes to talk to us, we're not all kind of like glassy-eyed and we kind of know what's going on. Because I truly believe that the more information that you guys have, then the better decisions that you can make for your community. So watch for that in the coming weeks. Moving forward here under public safety and infrastructure, the marshal's office roof was completed under budget, turned out great. Quashis is continuing to work with the fire chief on their build out. They originally came back to him with estimates that were above the amount that we had allotted for that. And so I give the fire chief a lot of kudos. He's been really pushing them to sharpen their pencils to make sure that this project can be completed under or at budget. Moving on, the splash zone continues its progress. If you look down there, you can see a lot of work that's been done. It's not just a dirt hole anymore. There's base gravel, there's concrete bases where the fixtures are. Electrical's been laid underneath the parking lot. Plumbing has been affixed. Now the next steps are plumbing. The plumbers are going to come back within the next week here to funnel everything to where the features are. And then the individual feature connections will be put in, more base will be put in, and then the final concrete along with the final features. So we're getting there. It's really exciting. I do want to give another shout out. I think I did at the last meeting, but he deserves even more. Andrew J. from Andrew Construction. I can't say it enough. And I'll say it again, we would not have a splash pad today if it was not for that gentleman and that company stepping up. I don't want to bore you with all the details during our public meeting. But truly, I give him so much kudos for helping us out at a pinch and really donating a lot of labor and efforts to this project. So huge thank you to him. He already knows to have a nice big part in our recognition sign. And we'll give him a shout out at the ribbon cutting too, because he definitely deserves it. Finally, we have various events that have either happened or are coming. We talked about Fun Before the 4th. Tuesday Tunes continues. We got the next one coming here in a couple weeks. And the big thing is the Mud Run. So the Madonia Kids Mud Run, August 2nd. It's a Saturday. Even if you don't have kids that are able to come, if you can still come out to volunteer, we'd love to have you. It should be a great event. We do not have as many signups as we've had in the years past. So we're going to really push our social media posts, our email blasts, and all of that to encourage late signups, really just to get what we can get. But overall, the smiles on those kids' faces at the end of this, even if they're covered in mud, makes it worthwhile at the end of the day. So I'm looking forward to that event, and I'm sure you guys are as well. So thanks so much.
Thank you. The next report would be from Marshall Leet.
Thank you. Although not on here, I kind of wanted to start with probably what was the biggest event for us of the month of June, and that was the Fun Before the 4th. From a law enforcement perspective, we thought it went well. There weren't any significant law enforcement issues we had to deal with, either us or the sheriff's department. Between myself and Sergeant Wolf, we put in over 20 hours of work in that day. The parade traffic direction plan went exactly as we hoped, and I'd like to give a shout out to the street department for that. Shutting down Fredonia Avenue with minimum staffing is always going to be a challenge. People just do not like to be told to take a detour, and nothing says go somewhere else like a dump truck across the road. I don't think we could have had success about his equipment and his people helping us. But the traffic direction of the parade seemed to go smoothly. There weren't any law enforcement issues. This is exactly kind of how we want the event to go. And credit as well for the guests and citizens of the village of Fredonia for making our job easy. In addition to that, we did also receive a complaint about speeding and high traffic on South Wisconsin. We took a look at that, and especially in light of the splash pad we have going in there, we wanted to get kind of ahead of the game on that. So I asked Deputy Devlis to conduct a traffic survey with the Armadillo system he's got access to. And it was kind of a mixed thing. It did confirm high traffic on that road. I think we were all surprised to see, and I believe the report should be attached and available there. We were surprised to see over 1,000 vehicles using a short dead-end road over the space of 6 days. I think that stands out to me as high. However, there was not a corresponding verification of a problem with speeding. The average vehicle speed was 21.1 miles per hour. The 85th percentile And in statistical analysis, 85 percentile is something they like to do. Was at 25 miles per hour. That means that 85% of the vehicles that travel that road during that 6-day time period were doing 25 miles per hour or less. He flagged 2 speeders that we would consider speeding excess. One at 36 miles per hour, one at 42 miles per hour. Both of those occurred in relatively early morning time periods. Again, from a statistical perspective, that's inconsequential. I think, yeah, he did the math there. It accounts for 0.0019% of vehicles that were traveling on that road. So the speeding does appear to be contained and controlled on that road, at least for now. Given that the traffic counts are high and probably will go higher once the splash pad is completed, it's something we will have to keep an eye on. But that's one of the reasons we conducted this, so we could get a baseline of where we are now. So if these complaints do come up in the future, we have some basis to compare.
Is this the week of fun for the 4th?
What was the time period?
A week before that, I believe, 6/20 to 6/26.
Was that weekend?
Yeah, I believe that was.
So did we have a lot of people parking down there?
Yeah, week leading up to the weekend. Let's see, it was the 26th.
Well, Fun Before the 4th was the 28th, so that would have been Thursday, Sunday through Thursday, it sounds like.
Oh, soccer and baseball and stuff. But, maybe soccer was done.
Yeah, that was Friday the 20th until Thursday the 26th. Fun Before the 4th was the 20th.
That's counting incoming and outgoing though, right? So really you could cut that number in half potentially.
Correct, yeah.
With a number.
That on road, that's absolutely negative statement. This is nowhere else.
Right.
Is there an activity working factory there?
Yes, but 2 employees?
Yeah, I don't believe I've ever seen more than 3 cars parked, at least not in the last decade. I don't think I've ever seen more than 3 cars parked there.
Couple UPS deliveries and a flatbed truck hauling supplies out, maybe once every other day or something. It's minimal.
It makes sense that road's gonna see a higher traffic count than like Hill Street. Because you do have the park down there, you have the soccer fields down there, it's an access to the bike path down there. People walk, yeah, baseball games, people walk their dogs down there. You are gonna see a higher traffic count on that road, that's just a thing. But we want to make sure that it doesn't translate to other unsafe behavior. So far, we don't have the indication of that's occurring.
It'll be interesting to see if you do a study after the splash pad opens.
Yeah, that's one of the things we intend to do. That's why I want to get a baseline for it. So we have a starting point to look at and evaluate.
Any other questions? Does that conclude your presentation?
Yes.
Just gonna take this segue here because Chief Weicker would normally have the next presentation. But I want to publicly acknowledge and well, even congratulate our law enforcement and fire and rescue and even the public works for their quick response to 2 very high profile incidents this week, Sunday and Tuesday. Their quick response minimized the damage and nobody got hurt, no injuries. So congratulations to everyone involved. I know the sheriff was involved. I don't know if the village marshal was out there or not, but
That was the sheriff's department.
so, but to all involved, good job.
I'm seeing Christy tomorrow, I will pass that on. She's always happy to hear feedback like that, so.
It's just amazing that There was almost no damage to the school, little bit of roof, little bit of water damage. On a Sunday morning when nobody's around. So the neighbor that caught it, called it in right away. The response of our volunteer fire department. Among the other agencies that helped, just, it's amazing.
Potential for a larger scale disaster there was not. Yeah.
It's,
Extreme. So,
and we're actually very fortunate that it did happen on a Sunday morning. Without anybody in the building.
Yeah. No kids there. It's about the best you can ask.
and the barn fire next door, just the same, you know, it was a very, very quick response. Yeah, the barn's gone, but nobody got hurt, nobody injured. No loss of life, most of all, most importantly. So kudos to our public service agencies, including Public Works, because I know I saw Eric out there helping with the fire hydrants.
Are those fires, being labeled suspicious?
Not.
Or do
Certainly
they-
not the school one, the barn one, we won't know if the sheriff's department's looking at that for a while yet.
And the statement in the press said that they're not considering it suspicious.
There's nothing indicated that barn fires aren't as uncommon as you might think. Those things tend to go off more often than.
It doesn't
than
take
we'd
much.
like to believe. You know?
Yeah, it doesn't take much.
And sometimes it's good, and sometimes it's the hay. Anyone that's ever done farming can tell you that some of those hay bales get wet and damp. And then they
It's
generate,
older.
yeah, they generate heat and smolder. You could have a barn with no electricity, just pack the hay and it will self-ignite and. You know, it'll go off like a scene from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
Doesn't take much. And then with the heat of the day and the hay itself, yes, it,
So I don't think they're looking at something suspicious for either one of these. The high school one was clearly the. But thanks.
The next report would have been from Chief Weicker, who's not here, but he did provide a document that is part of the packet, so that can be looked at your leisure. The next item is a report from Public Works Director Paulus.
Packet is in your report, to add to Rick's statement about the two fires, what the board has done since I've been here in 2.5 years with updated and upgraded, both of those fires, we were actually able to turn the wells on right away from our phone and instant. So there would be no issues with water pressure. And then to go on with the Highland Drive reconstruction, going to a 10-inch main. Not that I was happy with it, but they were actually able to flow off 2 hydrants at the same time without any issues.
Excellent.
So,
You mean
and
it
knock
was-
on wood, nothing's broke.
Do you have to meter those, or is that you just
We do,
doing that?
either the chief will tell me roughly how much water, or we do a guesstimate that. What we lost, because we have to report that. But yeah, we were able to turn the wells on and keep a steady pressure and have everything flowing.
and no issues with the wells at all.
No issues.
Excellent. The next report will be from the village clerk. I assume that she provided whatever she wanted to in the packet. All right, we will move on then to village treasurer, Treasurer Upson.
May's been. Still, I had some time out due to family issues, but you know, kept up with all the critical items that needed to be done, Rest
And
of,
I will say that your payroll instruction came just in time.
it did. Although Chris did forget to pay Chief Weicker.
Oh my.
Well, he doesn't turn in a time sheet, so he didn't read the notes as clear. Yeah, so I just was working on, catching up on other non-critical things that I, kind of put aside. During the times I was out of the office, and then Chris and I, like he said, started working on the budget review for the 6-month actuals. Looking forward to getting more into the budget process. Something I've been used to being knee-deep in prior positions, so, nothing unfamiliar to me, so, just this being, the governmental with all the various funds and stuff. But, yeah, otherwise, just digging into more things. Wendy did provide over finally all of their backup document to the audit. So I've started going through some of that, trying to make heads or tails of their journal entries that they provided. The first, few things I looked at, were okay. And then I, one thing that is a little more in-depth, the backup document doesn't really match anything on the journal entry, so I'll be contacting her about that, and, I'll continue to move forward with, the rest of backup that she provided. A lot of things are very common sense to me from things that I've done in my private sector career, so I would assume that, I would be able to handle a lot of that on my own and not have to have our auditors provide to us, and hopefully, gain some more money back from them. That they wouldn't have to spend time preparing it, just reviewing it kind of thing. So that is my goal for, the future years of all of that. So hopefully leading forward, a better path. And then along with like the quarterly water sewer type billings that Eric has been doing with, all of the lab work and all that stuff. So keeping, up to date with all of those and making sure that they're recorded in the proper periods and everything, and, so that we can get a good reading on that versus prior was just recording that when the cash payment came in, which for some of that with the water sewer fund, it's not quite that way on the cash kind of basis. So making sure to record those liabilities and revenues has been, what I've been focused on, this year with some of that stuff. So just moving forward with a lot of that.
All right. Thank you. Next report is from the Ozark County District 2 Supervisor. And we'll move on to the Mid-Moraine Municipal Association Designated Representative, Trustee Dorward.
Our next meeting will be in September. We'll have a report in late September, early October.
Okay. All right, we move on to the next part of the agenda, items for action and or discussion. First item on this part of the agenda, motion to approve St. John Lutheran sign permit application. Administrator Jenkins, do you want to fill in the board?
Sure. This is a sign that is gonna sit in public institutional zoning. So whenever it's that type of zoning, there's really no guidelines except that it goes through the plan commission and the village board for approval. The plan commission looked at it, you guys gave it a green light, and now it's just here for your approval as well.
I'll move to approve the sign permit.
Second.
We have a motion to approve. And a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? The item passes. Next item, motion to approve Village of Fredonia Splash Zone sign permit application. I'll turn this over to Administrator Jenkins again.
Sure, this is even more lenient. Under our ordinances, the village has no obligation to police ourselves when it comes to signage that we put in our own parks. So this did not have to come before you guys, but we wanted it to anyway, because it's going to be a big sign and a big deal for our community. So Plan Commission looked at it, gave it a thumbs up as well. You'll see that it's a 10-foot colorful sign. The colors match both the features that are going to be within the splash pad itself, and it matches some of our branding and logos. At first, our only concern was just about the size of the sign. But when we looked at it compared to the features that'll be there as well, it's not like it'll be an eyesore in the middle of everything that's low levels. There are features that are high up, close to that 10 feet as well. So it'll blend in pretty nice. And then overall, you see that it has the branding, it has the splash zone logo that was approved by PWSB, along with their logo incorporated, and then gives a shout out to all the various sponsors and recognition that we need to. So we certainly hope that you could approve this, and then we'll have Marshall Signs get going so we can coincide this with the finalization of the splash pad.
Any discussion?
I like the design, very nice. Even if you didn't put my name under the owners, that's our best donation.
Here and there.
I know that was the $5 that you ended up putting in, but
It's a test.
so originally we did have your name in there, but then as it started to fill up and they said, hey, are there any names we could take off? I was like, all right, well, I guess.
Yeah.
So, yeah. In heart, I wanted to keep your name on there, but just didn't fit. Sorry.
It's been kind of a running joke.
I know.
That's why.
Yeah, I get it.
Do we have a motion?
Motion to approve the Village of Fredonia splash zone sign permit application.
Awesome.
We have a motion, we have a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? All right, it passes. The next item, motion to approve Clerk Johnson's attendance to the inaugural WEC Clerks Conference. As she's not here to explain, Administrator Jenkins.
Sure. Well, for those who know how much Michelle loves WEC and loves the state of Wisconsin election system in general. Anyway, they're hosting this inaugural conference, and who better to send than probably the person who contacts them the most. So no, Michelle should definitely go to this learning opportunity. It's a great opportunity to ask questions of their staff. And honestly build collaboration with other clerks. The sign up last we checked already was like full. And so no offense, but you did have to pre-sign up. So hopefully you guys approve this. Because it capped out at 400 clerks, and there's 1,256 clerks in the state of Wisconsin that are all trying to get in here. So we recommend approval so that way she can go for sure.
Make a motion to approve Clerk Johnson's attending the inaugural WEC Clerks Conference.
I'll second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion? All those in favor? Aye. All those opposed? Passes. Motion to approve Administrator Jenkins' attendance to the LWM Fall Conference. Again, Administrator Jenkins.
Sure. This is the annual fall conference that the league does each year. And it's just a general training opportunity to connect with elected officials that go there, city managers, city administrators, and they cover a variety of topics. So I would love to attend. And then I'll just touch on it because it's also on this request for board consideration. The next agenda item is a specific training that's just for chief executives. So that is your mayors, your village presidents, and your administrators and managers that gather together just on a higher level leadership point of view. And that's one that I would ask that President Lenz come with me as well, as it'll be a great training opportunity for him. The associated costs you see in here, we would upfront the cost for sign up and then accommodations for the employee handbook. The general league conferences in Milwaukee, I don't plan on staying overnight for that. But then the chief executives one is in Green Bay, so I would stay one night for that conference.
Any discussion?
I just have a question
Yeah.
because under your league conference, chief executive workshop action requested.
I just saw that too. You could tell that I copied and pasted to the other one. Yeah,
Okay.
so ignore that. You've already handled the sleeping quarters.
So the printed one is correct because I'm not seeing that on the printed one. Any discussion, debate?
You said the one in Green Bay would be an overnight?
Yeah, they host that, what is that conference dates?
I believe they have a meeting that Wednesday evening
Yeah,
and then a full
The
day.
30th to the
activities
31st.
on Thursday.
so it'd be just a Wednesday to Thursday. And we have guidelines in our employee handbook that talks about how much for reimbursement, meals and things like that. So we have to, we have to follow along those lines. I can't just like go out and buy steak dinner and expect you guys to pay for it.
Motion to approve Administrator Jenkins attending the LWM Fall Conference.
I'll second that.
Then I'll make a motion to approve Administrator Jenkins and President Lenz's attendance to the summer meeting of chief executives.
All right, any further discussion?
Why don't you take one motion at a time, just because you got two different ones.
So on the first motion to approve Administrator Jenkins' attendance to the LWM Fall Conference, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? On the other motion to approve Administrator Jenkins and President Lenz's attendance to the summer meeting of chief executives, all those that approve? Aye. All those opposed? All right. Next item, motion to approve bulk waste dumpster policy. We'll turn this one over to Director Pauls. Just to
So
refresh our memory.
Previous month, came to you from after our bulk waste in spring, some of the issues that we had, some of the things I'd like to clean up on. So what I have there for you is, I believe it's 3 days in spring, 3 days in fall, have it down at the wastewater plant where it's gated, camera, and can be manned by one of the village staff members. Would request some type of ID, village proof that you live here to dump, just to cut down on cost and eliminate the extras.
That'd be a license.
It'd be licensed, it could be, water bill, We Energies. I think when we have that sign up there that says village ID required, the ones that don't have it will probably turn off. Then dump it in the parks. The dates though, I would just like to ask that it not be after the village-wide rummage sale. I'd like to maybe do a couple weeks later when I would have summer help. So they could be down there instead of having one of the full-time guys.
I was gonna ask you, do you have the staff to do it Thursday, Friday and?
In the summer, I would, Mike's down there to plan all day, but normally he's working or in the lab, so it's hard to stand out there. So that's why I'd asked it'd be a little bit later.
So we're talking about putting it maybe in June, early June?
Yeah,
Yeah. Seems reasonable to me.
Some of your summer interns.
What about the fall though?
fall I'd have to determine, I know we had, Simon, which now is our full-time guy. He was here on his off days of college. So I'd have to think about that one a little bit more, how to do that one. If not, I can do it.
Well, it's your department to run, so I'm sure you can handle it.
We'll find it.
I'll make a motion to approve the bulk waste dumpster policy.
Second that.
It's your break.
I have a motion and a second. Do we have any further discussion? All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? All right. Last item here, update on 2026 Summer Parks and Recreation Program.
All right. For those that were around last year when you guys created my goals, one of the goals that Trustee Bartz, who's no longer on the board, gave me was to investigate reinvigorating the summer youth program. I know, I'm sure Trustee Beglin and Trustee Dorwer to remember, there was a time that we had a summer youth recreation program. that was discontinued for various reasons. There were staffing challenges, there was concerns from parents regarding supervision, there was care standards and liability with us managing youth and all the above. Back 2 years ago, I believe, we had looked at hiring at least a full-time summer person to do that. And even that, like, not to say it failed miserably, but it did not quite go very well either. So it's been on a pause for a couple of years. The board had asked that I at least look into it a little bit more. So first, I contacted our neighboring municipalities and similar sized communities to see what they do for their rec programs, and virtually like none of them have their own program they do all by themselves. They'll either partner it with another nonprofit, maybe it's school, maybe it's the other rec programs like baseball, football clubs, and things like that are in the community. But virtually, again, none of them are just doing it on their own. The one example that I thought was kind of cool was the village of Saukville. They partner with the city of Port Washington in order for their residents to participate in Port Washington's rec program. And so in a sense, Saukville residents can enroll their children in Port Washington's program at the resident rates. And then the difference of the cost if you're outside of being a resident, then Saukville covers. I don't know if Port Washington would be willing to extend that program, but just know that that's one way that a nearby community has kind of made this still happen. And then I gave some data on reinstating our own program. One, we need to find a qualified staff member to do it, which is, again, is a challenge for us to do. Even if we find that person, what's that person going to be? Are they going to be part-time? Are they only going to do the summer program? Or are they going to be full-time, work with DPW the rest of the year, but then also be versed in working with kids during the summer? So that salary range from $40,000 to $60,000 plus benefits. Additional costs to think about are insurance coverage, providing the programming itself. So activities, field trips, supplies. So very quickly, that number added up to like $100,000 commitment for us to do our own rec program. And sure, we'd love to say that we can cover those costs with registration fees, but I don't know if that's realistic either. So I say all this to say never. Maybe there's an opportunity. I wanted to still do my job that you asked me to do, but I would not recommend we proceed with a summer rec program, at least at this time. And if this is something that you want us to look into, I can reach out to Port Washington and see if maybe they can do a similar deal that they do with Saukville residents. That's what I got.
We had it with Port for either 1 or 2 summers, and that seemed to work out well.
Say it again.
We had it with, in conjunction with Port, like you suggested, we had that for 1 summer at least, and maybe 2.
Yeah, so they joined, so it's still our program, but we would join Port Washington for like their field trips and things like that. So whenever they would bus kids and take places, they would also take our kids. So that's why they might be open to another partnership like that. But again, us running our own program, even with opportunities like that, I just don't see that being realistic. Not that we don't love Parks and Rec, but we have other needs within our village as well.
And I think we may be just a little too small to support something like that. Port Washington is large enough to have enough children to support that kind of a program. And with Saukville added in, I'm sure that helps. We'd probably help too, and that would help our parents who have to find a place to deposit their children over the summer, right? Personally, I think it'd be worth looking into whether or not Port Washington would be receptive to having our parents work with them and having us maybe make up that difference.
Yep. I'm happy to look into that for you. But again, if that's not an option, are we all on board with us kind of pushing this by the wayside?
I think it would be very hard.
Yeah, it's not viable on our own.
Yeah.
Great. I appreciate the feedback. Sounds great.
If they could go into or watching even a reduced rate on like a pool pass.
Yep.
That would be.
Yeah,
amazing.
that's
If it was
a good idea.
reduced rate on a pool pass to get, that gives parents, I mean, a lot of them have to be there still with that, but. It's still a relief just to have your kids get in. Kind of playing.
Yep.
Well, if the plan plant goes through, I could use 12, 15 kids down there now.
Hold you to that. I might
There
be
you go.
sending my son over to you.
Yeah, right?
Hard labor.
He's got a couple more years yet, but yeah.
You wanna,
What's that?
you wanna mention the land at all?
We can mention it
Yeah.
for correspondence.
All right, yes, we are up to correspondence. Is there any correspondence?
Just exciting news about the lab. That's what Eric was just
Oh, okay.
poking at me about. And you heard a little bit about in the auditor's presentation too. So we all know that when the lab started off, we started off in the hole. We had to buy a lot of equipment, and we'll slowly work our way up in order to make it self-sufficient. And so last year we ended with a little bit of a surplus, and this year's goal was like $33,000 for revenues. Well, as of this
Well,
month,
Yeah, second quarter that we built out, so for the 3 months, and mind you. One of the labs that's in there now was only 1 month and the other was 2. And this includes the hauling and the water hookup was just shy of 24,000 we built out.
in a quarter.
For the-
Just for second quarter.
So,
That's good. Very
So
good.
What's our
the,
total support? Curious.
we're at 35,000.
And our budget.
I'm sorry, the budget was only 22 and we're at 35,000. So there you go. And so Eric, to be frank, there's a workload cap, right? There's only so much that we can do. But I know long-term, if this ends up being, truly beneficial to the village for us to operate it, if we continue revenues like that, we could afford like a body there, like doing that work, which is great. So, knock on wood that this is a sign of what's to come, and
Is that something that you could possibly work with some of the local colleges and do like interns and?
so the hard part, like we have Tessa right now, so Mike's gonna
Because
be
you're
on,
going to college here shortly.
right, Mike's going on vacation next week, so Tessa's running the plant. We'll go down there and do the outside maintenance that I don't want her to do. But she's running the lab, the downfall of, relying on someone. Intern or, summer help is, it was a freak accident, Tessa ended up breaking her leg. And I didn't have her for 6 weeks, so then I'm sending someone else down there to help with the workload. But where we're at now with, I think it's 6 municipalities. And a couple outside ones there, I'm full, every piece of equipment I have there is filled. So I cannot add any more.
Well, that's why I was wondering, working with one of the colleges and.
It is hard to find someone in that field,
Okay.
because when you say you wanna work in a wastewater lab. It's not appeasing.
But I was gonna say University of Wisconsin, Milwaukee does have their freshwater degree program and sciences studies. I'm sure they have people working in wastewater as well. I mean, Jones Island and so forth, you've got to have people in that area as well. So it might be worth reaching out to them to see if they have people that would be interested in.
Yeah, the other
Field-
issue with that is we run on a schedule.
Right.
And our busy days in the labs are Tuesdays and Thursdays, so if I can't have or get a person Tuesday and Thursday, it's not really helping me.
Right.
So it's a tough thing, and I think someone from West Bend reached out, but she could only do like the weekends or like certain nights. I'm not
Yeah.
operating that. I
Right.
don't wanna be, so.
Yeah, but we'd get more done if we were operating all night,
We
third
could.
shift, second shift,
We
weekend
could.
shift.
But
Anyway.
that's where it's at. Lab is functioning. I know this would be in my July report. We had our lab audit for water on Monday, which we passed, so we're good for another 2 years. On the water side. Next year will be the big hammer for wastewater. So that one might take a day. As they comb through everything, especially since I'm open to the public. So then they really hammer me on, make sure everything's correct and done by the book. But I'm ready. Handle.
We have anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Okay. Yeah.